Hello, welcome. We'll be discussing some of the most important or expected questions from economics for the upcoming exam. We'll be looking into state finances, government securities and gilt accounts, retrospective taxation, land banks, national multidimensional poverty index, and also financial inclusion index. So these are the important six concepts that we'll be looking into. Very important. Let's get started. The first one that we have is state finances. Very important. You see, the status of government finances is a very important concept. So you must be thorough with both state and central government finances. Okay, this is imperative for you to understand. The reason why this is important is because RBI has released the state finances. The state finances, a study of budget of 2021 and 22. The theme of this report is coping with the pandemic. So the theme becomes very important. It is coping with the pandemic. Right? Now, it's the nature of this report is that it's an annual assessment report on the state government finances. So please understand what are we talking about here? We're talking about the state government finances. Now, some of the important highlights of the report are that the consolidated gross fiscal deficit, which is GFD, budgeted at 3.7% to gross domestic product of states. All right. So there's an improvement for 4.7% in the revised estimates for 2020 to 2021. Then combined debt to GDP ratio, very important, combined debt to GDP ratio of states was at 31% at the end of March 2021. This was higher than 20% limit for states by 2022-23, which is recommended by the N.K. Singh committee, right? Then the ratio of interest payments to revenue receipts increasing at a steady pace for the last few years, indicating erosion of debt sustainability. So erosion of debt sustainability. So these are some of the important highlights of the report. You can go through the report in a detailed manner, but these are the important points. Now, the next thing that we have to look into is that what are the steps that are taken by the center and also by the RBI to support the states. Because why? We're talking about state finances as a whole. So let's see some of the steps which are taken by the center first. So center has reformed linking additional borrowing space for the states. You see, the central government permitted states to increase their physical deficit limit from 3% of the GSDP to how much? To 5% of the GSDP, right? Very important. This was in 2020-21. So this is very important. Please understand it is the increase. Then special assistance has also been given to states for capital expenditure. Interest-free loan up to 15,000 crores has been given to the states, and this is something which needs to be repaid after 50 years. So just the important points you're going to remember. Also, the center has immensely contributed in terms of the health sector, that it has released around, you see, health sector information is equally important. You can include this within the infrastructure aspect as well, that for the health sector, the central government has released around 80,000 crores for the states under what? Under the National Health Mission. This is done as a grant. So these are the steps that are taken by the center. Now, what are the steps that have been taken by the RBI? This is also equally important. Now, the RBI basically has, ensured, let's write for RBI here. These are the steps by the center. What has the RBI done? The RBI, we're going to do it here, okay? The RBI has made certain relaxations as being permitted with regards to availment of the overdraft facilities. So relaxations in terms of the overdraft facility. And the second point, as an assistance to the state done by the RBI, is that ways and means advances. So this is WMA, ways and means advances limit of the state has been enhanced. So very importantly, the focus should be on understanding that has been enhanced, these have been relaxed, then there has been an increase in their fiscal deficit limit. You see, increase, decrease, enhance, reduce, these are very important points, and this is where you can get confused in the examination. So have a thorough understanding of what has been done. Now, this is about the first point. The second point, since we're talking about state finances, it is imperative to understand that what is the reason behind the shortfall in state finances. What are the possible reasons? So quickly we'll discuss some of the reasons. Some of the reasons are that there is a low tax buoyancy. There has been a shortfall in tax collections. This is of course due to lockdown, due to COVID. Then there has been a reduction in the share of united funds in central transfers to states. There has been a reduction, again, very importantly. Then lower capital expenditure from the states is also one of the reasons. So these are the possible important reasons that you must understand, that these are the reasons for the shortfall in state finances. Of course, there are more, but these are the important ones that you need to understand. So this is all about the first pertaining to state finances. Let's get to the second. The second is government securities and gilt accounts. Very important. This was in the news as well. So what do we have to understand here? Again, the RBI has allowed small retail investors. It has allowed these small retail investors to invest in government securities. So GSEC is what? Government securities. And how are they going to invest in these government securities? They're going to invest in through the gilt accounts. These gilt accounts are with the central bank, that is under the RBI Retail Direct Scheme. So name of the scheme is very important, that is RBI's Retail Direct Scheme. Now, you'll only understand this when you know what exactly is government securities and what exactly is gilt accounts. So very quickly, let's understand. You see, government securities are of two types. They're either short term or they are long term. So long term is a treasury bill with original maturity of more than 1 year, or you can say 1 year or more than 1 year. And a short term is a treasury bill with original maturity of less than 1 year. Okay, so basically government securities are what? Government securities are tradable instruments which are issued by the central government or they are issued by the state governments. Now based on their periods, like we discussed here, they are short term and they are long term is something. We're dividing these into two because we are understanding that based on their time period, there are two kinds. Okay. Now, in India especially, this is very important, definitely can come in the exam. In India, the central government issues both kinds of, securities. That is, it's dealing with treasury bills and it is also dealing with bonds or dated securities. On the other hand, in India, the state governments can not issue treasury bills. They can only issue what? Bonds or dated securities. Is this clear? So this is a very important point that you will get it in the exam, that central government only and only can alone issue the treasury bills. Okay. So what exactly are treasury bills? Treasury bills are money market instruments and they are short-term debt instruments which are issued by the government of India and are presently issued in three tenors, namely 91 days, 182 days and 364 days. Okay, treasury bills are basically zero coupon securities and pay no interest. So these are the important things pertaining to government securities. Now, what is the other word here? The other word here was gilt account. What exactly is gilt account? Gilt account basically means to open an account and not just open, rather to also maintain an account for holding what? Government securities by an entity. So it can be done by an entity or it can be done by a person who is permitted by what? By the Reserve Bank of India, that is the central bank, the RBI. Okay. So these are the important things that you need to remember pertaining to gilt account, then government securities, treasury bills, and what do we mean by that. RBI has now allowed, okay, small retail investors to invest in government securities through gilt accounts. I hope this makes sense. Now, the third thing that we're going to study today is retrospective taxation. What about retrospective taxation? The word retrospective is very important here. You see, recently the Parliament enacted the Taxation Laws Amendment Act, that is 2021. This was enacted to amend the IT Act 1961 and also the Finance Act 2012. And through this, it scraped the 2012 retrospective tax laws. So this is the reason why this concept becomes important. But what exactly is again the meaning of retrospective? You see, retrospective is simply, the easiest way of understanding it is that it is a backward looking tax. It is a backward looking tax. This is basically used by nations to remove taxation anomalies through new or additional charge on past transactions to overcome the misuse of legal loopholes by the companies. Okay. Now this is done in India now. To give you some time frame, it's basically that in India it was introduced in 2012, empowering income tax department to raise tax demands on capital gains arising from indirect transfer of assets located within India. So the bit is not that really important, but what exactly is retrospective taxation is very important. This is basically backward looking tax. So remember this bit, okay? And also, since we're talking about tax, you have to understand that additional information, right to tax. Right to tax is a core sovereign power. Okay, the Constitution of India empowers the government. Who? The government. So government is empowered by the Constitution of India to levy or charge taxes except by the authority of law. Is this clear? So this is very important. Have a thorough understanding of it. Now let's get to the next concept, which is land banks. Very important again. What is land banks? You see, the term is not a usual bank. Okay, the term is not a usual bank. The word here is land banks. So we have to break it down into two. Recently, the Department of Investment and Public Asset Management, that is DIPAM, finalized the structure of land bank company with the task of selling land parcels. Okay, please understand, selling the land parcels which are owned by who? Which are owned by government departments or which are owned by the public sector companies. Is this clear? Now, this is the reason why it was in news, but we're yet to understand that what exactly is a land bank. So you see, a land bank is nothing but a governmental entity. It is a governmental entity or it is a non-profit corporation. It is there to manage and dispose. To manage and dispose vacant properties, vacant land, properties, or we can also say tax delinquent properties to ensure what? The goal here is to ensure that there is a more productive use of that vacant land. Is this point clear? So this is what a land bank is. It started in the 1990s by the state government, and by the year 2017, most Indian states either already had sizable land banks or were in the process of creating them. Now, why does this concept become all of a sudden that important? Because there's a history behind it. That is, the Niti Ayog in its strategy for New India at the rate 75, here Niti Ayog in this suggested that there should be a new system where we will use geographic information system, that is GIS based maps at all levels to create pre-approved land banks for manufacturing facilities. Okay, now what are the benefits of land banks? Very easily you can understand that it is resulting in something which is improved land use, and improved land use is obviously going to add to what? To the efficiency. Then we will address inordinate delays in disposing government land. Then it will obviously boost economic growth. Okay, it will boost economic growth. It will also boost investments. This will lead in ease of doing business, and there are also moral values associated to it. That is simple point that it is going to bring in transparency in land market, and this will reduce the burden on judiciary pertaining to the disputes. Are these points clear? So you must have a thorough understanding of this concept. It becomes very important just because of it being introduced first by Niti Ayog in New India at the rate 75, where it talks about how we should be dealing with this concept. Okay, so this is about land banks. The next concept that we're going to do is National Multidimensional Poverty Index. Now, in the year 2021, Niti Ayog, I'm using the short forms, but I'm saying them in the full way. Niti Ayog released India's first national multi-poverty index. Okay, very important. So, National Multi-Poverty Index (NMPI). This is India's first, released by Niti Ayog. Okay. Now, the baseline report and dashboard is the full name of it. In collaboration with who? So this is Niti Ayog plus UNDP plus Oxford Poverty and OPHI. Now, what are these? What is UNDP? UNDP is United Nations Development Program. Its headquarters is in New York. It basically works to end the injustice of poverty, injustice of inequality, and also deals with climate change. It plays a crucial role in helping countries towards the sustainable development goals. So this is the basic bit about UNDP. Then what is OPHI? OPHI is basically Oxford Poverty and Human Development Initiative, right? OPHI's work is grounded in who? Amartya Sen. Amartya Sen's capability approach. This is a very famous approach. I'm sure you must have read this. Please do remember the name of the person responsible. That is Amartya Sen. Okay. This basically is, discussing all the important ways of creating new tools and inform policies to reduce what? To reduce the injustices. And what sort of injustices are we talking about here? We're talking about poverty. Okay. We're talking about, let's say, inequality. So all of these are extensively discussed. So what is very important, you understand, this is by Niti Ayog in collaboration with UNDP, Oxford Poverty and Human Development Initiative. Very important. Okay. Now, what is the important thing that you need to know about this? Firstly, you see Multidimensional Poverty Index, that is MPI, was first developed in 2010 by who? UNDP and OPHI. This is multidimensional poverty index. Don't get confused. Here we are talking about what? We are talking about national multidimensional. So this is pertaining to what? Pertaining to India alone. It has been done by Niti Ayog. Okay. But some of the basic things are common. For instance, when we are talking about multidimensional poverty index, this is basically, like I told you, it was developed in 2010 by UNDP and OPHI as a poverty estimation measure to be used in UNDP's flagship Human Development Report. What are the possible dimensions of poverty taken in here? We take into perspective health and education and, very important, standard of living. Now, quickly under these three, many others are discussed. For instance, under health, nutrition is discussed, child mortality is discussed. Under education, years of schooling is discussed, then school attendance is discussed. And under standard of living, there is sanitation, drinking water, electricity, housing, assets, cooking fuel, all of these are basically discussed, all pertaining to basically standard of living. So what are the three important things here? Health, education, and standard of living. Okay. Now, this is done by what? Multi-dimensional poverty index. But we are talking here about the National Multi-Dimensional Poverty Index, which is released by who? Which is released by Niti Ayog. So what is this NMPI? That is the index dealing with. Here the basic study has focused that when it comes to the let's say the states, when it comes to the union territories, when it comes to the districts, some of the findings in this report has been that national MPI is at 0.118%, with rural at 0.155 and urban at 0.04. Okay. Now, what is the range here? The range is very important. You see, MPI basically ranges from 0 to 1, and higher values imply higher poverty. Okay. Higher values, simply remember, higher value simply implies what? Higher poverty. So highest poverty states and union territories as per the report are what? It is Bihar first with 51.91% of the population as poor. First Bihar, then followed by Jharkhand, then the third is Uttar Pradesh. So these states are very important. Please remember them. And same, this is highest. The lowest is starting first with Kerala with 0.71%. Now you can simply see the difference. Here Bihar is 51.91, here Kerala is 0.71%. So after Kerala it is Puducherry, and the third is Lakshadweep. So you can simply understand that these two are union territories and this is a state. So this is discussing the not just the union territories but also the states. Very, very important. Okay. Now, these are the important points that you need to understand pertaining to this. But of course, there are other findings as well. But I'm only discussing with you the very important points and the numbers today. The next thing that we have to discuss is Financial Inclusion Index. Very important again. RBI has released India's first composite Financial Inclusion Index. So this is basically what? This is FI index. So some basic things that you need to know about Financial Inclusion Index is that Financial Inclusion Index is a comprehensive index which basically captures the extent of what? Financial inclusion. It captures financial inclusion across the country as it is recommended by RBI under its National Strategy for Financial Inclusion 2019 to 2024. Okay. Now, what all things are included in this financial inclusion? So basically, it incorporates details of banking, it incorporates details of investment, and then pension sector is also included, insurance, and postal sector is also included. Okay. Now, it captures information on various aspects of financial inclusion on a scale. So scales are always very important. On a scale from 0 to 100. What does the 0 mean here? 0 basically represents complete financial exclusion and 100 indicates complete financial inclusion. So this is complete financial inclusion and this is complete financial exclusion. Okay. Is this clear? Now, the financial inclusion doesn't have a base year. This is an important bit that you need to remember. So it has no base year. It has no base year reflecting cumulative efforts of all the stakeholders over the years towards financial inclusion. So this is an important aspect. Remember this from the exam's purpose. Now, this is done by RBI, very, very important. It is the first composite financial inclusion index, right? Now, there are three broad parameters. The last bit that you need to understand about it is that there are three broad parameters. What are these parameters dealing with? First is access, the second is usage, and the third is quality. And within these three, there are 97 indicators. Now, of course, Remembering all 97 indicators is going to be very hard, but you have to understand that there are three broad parameters: access, usage, and quality. So A, U, Q. All right. Now, access is basically 35%, usage is 45%, and the quality is what? Quality is 20%. So these are all the important things that you need to remember pertaining to the recently released first composite financial inclusion index by the RBI. So these are all the important concepts, very important. These were in the newspapers, these are in the news. So you must have a thorough understanding of all of these. And this is it from today's lecture. Thank you for watching.